is like the distinct smell of body odor and community, right? Like we do these two things super well. So we're going to jump into this content a little bit and talk to you about what next year kind of looks like and also pick your own mind. So I'm going to let Houston talk about this first section.
So yes, before we actually delve into talking about community, we want you to actually break up into groups of maybe like 3 or 4 people, and we want you to just kind of go through for a minute or two and just simply discuss with one another each of these questions, such as like, what is the value of community? How do you plan on building community and building? So we'll just kind of head. How much time did you end up setting?
We'll give you all about 2 or 3 minutes. Just discuss amongst each other. Don't feel you have to hit all of these, but if there's 1 or 2 that really stick out, we just want to keep your brains going in this before we get you some of our information. So we'll give you about 2.5, 3 minutes to talk about that. Go ahead.
So time has concluded, everybody. If everyone just wants to kind of bring their attention back this way, would anyone like to share what they kind of came up with a group to any of these responses? Yes.
We talked about like the value of community. It's like being able to relate with the people you're around, and also like being able to feel comfortable around them and just being included.
Great. Anyone else like to share? Okay, great. So we're going to move on to We got a poll everywhere. If anyone has done that before, Keelan's going to run us through that.
Yeah, so really that was just a booby trap because you're going to have a chance to send your responses in anyway. So if you have a phone with internet capability, we know that's not the case for everybody, but unless you're using a flip phone, maybe you can get to this. If you'll go to pollev.com /Keelan Myers 899, it's up there at the top. We've actually set up a poll everywhere, and we'll get some of these responses on here. So once you get to that site, our first prompt is, how do you plan on building community? And we'll give you all a couple answers just to throw something in there, and we'll discuss a couple of them as they come up. Just thinking about how you might develop community for next year. So as these keep popping up here, feel free to keep writing in your own responses. We want to honor everybody's. But we see a lot of good things about how you all plan on developing community. I mean, a lot when people want to become RAs, right? Like this is the thing you think about. You've probably had a really good community this year, or maybe you didn't have such a good community, and you want to be able to add on to that. Like you want to be able to put your own spin on everything. See a lot up here for provide opportunities for people to interact with each other. Programs, hang out in the lobby, things like that, food conversations, open door. Really good. So y'all have a ton of ideas with this. We're going to go ahead and transition to our next one that we have on here, food and conversation. Great. Y'all are on it. So next we're going to talk about, Houston will go ahead and activate that for us, and then we're going to talk about what hurdles exist in community building. So we have a lot of these great ideas, but what hurdles get in the way of that? What do you have to overcome to build the community that you're looking for? Y'all came up with these pretty quick. As they go through, let's talk. Somebody says busy schedules. Somebody in here talk to me a little more about that. Why are busy schedules difficult when it comes into building a community? Go ahead.
Because it's not just your busy schedule you're taking into account, it's your students. So it's one thing for the RA to be available, but it's another thing for your students because everyone has individual lives that you're taking care of and you're participating in.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And once you think about working with upperclassmen, because not everybody's just working with freshmen, right? When you get into upperclassmen, you're not only dealing with like the adjustment to college and everything, you're also looking at internships that they have, heavier course schedules. They start working on everything under the sun at that point. So you really got to look at that. I see getting everyone involved. Anybody talk about how that's tricky, some of the things you may have faced with that, or that you anticipate seeing? Go ahead.
There might be people that might not be interested in the things that you want to plan for your tour hall or whatever, and it's hard to foster community if not everyone's there. So just trying to find ways to make programs interesting to everyone and also make sure that everyone feels included would be a hurdle.
Great point. That's really true. When you're programming, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give is you've got to think about. I got to make sure I'm in the camera right here. When you're programming, you got to think about not what you want to do, but what the people around you want to do, right? And you got to kind of build around that model, because if you just do what you and your staff are interested in, you may miss the mark completely. Let's talk about one more. Let's talk about shy and introverted people. Introverts are real. They are very real. I had to learn myself that they exist. Logan, I saw you throw up the deuces. Talk to me a little bit about it.
I don't know. It's like sometimes you just want to chill in the room and like not participate.
Exactly. Sometimes you just want to chill in the room. Yes. Anybody else feel that? Anytime, sometimes you just want to chill in the room? That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. You got your hand up.
Well, I was very introverted in high school, and I know, like, when I had, like, leaders or mentors, like, peers, that were also introverted or understood that, I was more personally connected to them, so I think it's important as an RA to kind of have that side, and, you know, you can make events that are just very chill, and kind of appeal to that kind of person, because anybody appreciates just a chill night, so.
That is such a great point. Because you get into these, if you had, and it's important when we put our staffs together as RDs that we don't get 5 extroverts. A building of 5 Keelans Pembroke would be burned down in a matter of like
3 minutes.
3 minutes. We would test the burn time. It would truly happen. So you've got to have those people that can connect at different levels, right? It's so important, because sometimes you may have residents who don't want to go to the programs, but they really value that connection with you. And if you have that open door type policy, they may just stroll in, or they may love you stepping into their space. Very true. We have one, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I remember when I was a freshman, I was looking on, that community building isn't just large group community, it's individual relationships. So maybe those introverted people may not want to participate in all large group activities, but the community they build is with their roommate or with their roommate, and that's equally as valuable, if not more.
That is such a great point. If your residents feel that they are engaged, then you have succeeded. It is not, if they feel that they are safe and they are getting what they need and they know who to come to, you have won. That is one of the biggest things that you should take away from today. Community development is not a building-wide thing. If your people feel at home, safe, and they can go to you if they need anything, you are doing a great job as an RA. It is not strictly having 60 people at every one of your programs. And then we have one last question that we want to touch on super briefly. It's an important part to know that you are working on a team. So you have returning RAs as well as RDs. How do you foresee yourselves relying on them? We'll give you a couple seconds to chime in on this too. How can you lean on them for help? This is great. I've seen really 3 that I really want to hit on super quick. First and foremost, ask for advice. Do y'all see any challenges that come with asking advice in those first couple weeks on the job? How about, I know we can get in a habit of like, okay, I'm a new RA, I know I can do this, I want to prove myself. Maybe I don't want to ask these questions because I know I was listening and training, but I still don't completely, I don't want to ask the question because I don't want to seem like the weak one. Anybody resonate with that? Is that kind of like, yeah, you want to make sure you have it together. You really want to make sure you have it together. I saw up here, create great relationships. Somebody talk to me about that a little bit. When you talk about these great relationships that you're forming. Go ahead, Jackson.
I just think relationships with your RD and your other RAs, you need to be just as great with them as other residents, just so you can go to them for ideas or just help you need to create relationships just like your other students.
Great point. Great point. Go ahead.
I think also RDs, when hiring their staff, would really look to balance each other's strengths and weaknesses, and therefore we should be able to work together to find the strengths and weaknesses and help each other in those various obstacles that we might have.
Great point. Yeah.
I feel like the relationship between the RD and the RAs are like the foundation for the community, so the community can only be as strong as the team behind it.
That is such a wonderful point. Go ahead.
I feel like if we want our students to feel comfortable asking questions to us, we should also be exemplifying that and feel comfortable asking questions with our superiors or our students.
Yes. Those are all wonderful points. Biggest thing being, your students are going to look at you for those answers, and what you've modeled, they'll see as effective ways to do so. I would say one of the greatest things we've done in our building this year is there's a pretty open line of communication from the RAs to the RDs, and it really just sets a great foundation for what's going on. You already have some really great points. Being able to put that into action with those relationships, absolutely wonderful. So now we'll jump back into our presentation a little bit. So there are a lot of studies that show the first 6 weeks of college is the most important time. It is the most. It is when students are figuring out, do they belong? During that time period is where they're getting all those answers. Before we jump into content, I'm going to tell you a brief little story about this. This is a story that is going to do a circle and then relate to what's happening. And it starts with my first girlfriend in 9th grade. Yeah, I was like captain of the football team, the 9th grade football team, so not like the big captain. It's not a humble brag, it's about the smallest honor that you could possibly have. Basically, I just showed up to every practice, so they're like, well, Keelan. And then I was dating my new girlfriend, who was the captain of the cheerleading team. Ninth grade and cheerleading team. Again, not a humble brag. She couldn't do a cartwheel, or else she would have been on varsity. So, not super on it or anything. But through this first 6 weeks, I'm like, brush your shoulder in the hallway, we'd walk and bump shoulders, and tell a little joke and everything. And about the 5 weeks mark, I was like, you want to come over to my house? And she was like, yeah, I want to. So she came over to my house. I knew this was the moment. I was smitten. So we have a little game room that you could clearly see from the living room because my parents wouldn't dare have me anywhere else. But she was coming over. I was like, I got to set the mood. I got to put on something romantic. So I turned on 007 Casino Royale. Really sets the mood. So that's on. Throw my arm around her. She accepts it. I'm like, okay. I'm a little further. This first 6 weeks has been going real good. I'm feeling good. Put a little tickle on her. She's like, oh, and then stays there. I'm like, ooh, this is going good. Take a little more, get a little closer to the face. She doesn't push away. I'm like, this is the blue. So I tickle her. She said, Keelan, stop. Lay one on her. And then I disconnected. Was this far from her. And I said, her name was Alice. I said, Alice, I think I love you. She put her hands on my face and said, Keelan, I really like you a lot. But I need to go home. Dang! Point being, in this situation, we want to get our residents, you all are Allison, our residents are Keelan. We have this first 6 weeks to make them love us, right? We want to get them attached to Belmont in this first 6 weeks that we have them. A lot of studies show that these first few weeks are so crucial. What's going on? Because when they get here, they're wondering, do I fit in? Who do I hang out with? Is it a fun place? Am I smart? Is this the right place for me? These are things going on. How many of you as freshmen resonated with some of these? You're trying to figure out your place. You're also talking to your friends at other places, right? People who let you do maybe fraternity sorority recruitment in the fall, so they already have these connections and everything. Maybe they play sports at those schools. Maybe they're able to get involved with the club, and they have this success. Well, they're talking to some of our students who maybe don't have that connection, right? They've made these great lifelong friends. They need to figure out, do I fit in? And that's what is so crucial for us as RAs, is to be able to tell them in the first 6 weeks, be comfortable here. We want you to be part of it. I stress with my guys, the Pembroke guys, Houston, what do I say is the most crucial point?
Probably one of the most crucial points is always having an open door, and really always, like, even both semesters, we've always put a lot of emphasis on the first 4 weeks in particular, but really just the first 6 weeks, because just from experience as an RA, it is the easiest point to really establish those connections of, like, you want to be known as the RA for, like, someone to come to and talk to. And as the year goes on, like, as you reach, like, post-fall break on into winter break or second semester, a lot of people already have their group and have what they're comfortable with in college. So it's going to be much more difficult of a hill to climb at that point. So really putting that emphasis on this first 6 weeks will make the rest of the year a lot more easier to kind of work with and really set the foundation for what you want to build in the future.
Yeah. And what I tell my guys, Houston nailed it. If you can give me everything you have in those first 2 to 4 weeks, the rest of the semester is golden. If you set that foundation early, what you have here on the right, that coming out strong, if you are building relationships right away, you don't know how much, well, you do know because you may have had an RA who did this to you. It is so crucial that in that first period of time, these relationships that you have, the first time they get a sense of that homesickness, they miss their family, they're feeling left out, anything like that, the earlier we can build these relationships with our residents, studies show the more at home they feel, the more willing they are to not only be in their room and be comfortable, but step out into our community. Not only that, but also expectation setting. We do something in Pembroke called Pembroke 101. We try to do that in the very first week to say, this is what it means to be in this hall and to be a member. This is what people in our hall do. This is what people in our hall do not do. So we use that as an opportunity to say, this is what it means to be a valuable member and this is what it's not. You don't have to have a program that says that, but there's so much that can go into the way you're acting, the way that you're talking about that last one, policy enforcement. If you'll come out strong and you'll use that first period of time, it's not a crackdown period where you're trying to be the police. That's not your job as an RA. But if you're being consistent in what you are enforcing and the policies that you enforce and just making sure that you're doing everything you're supposed to do, is a really great job. The first 6 weeks, and I would argue the first 4 weeks, are really that crucial time period where we just want to nail it. We try to do a lot of our great programs in the first 4 weeks as a real model of mine. Because if you do your great programs early on, people are willing to come back to them. We did a luau called Come On, I Want to Meet Ya, the first day of class. We had like 100 people turn out, and that really set us up for success the rest of the programming semester with Pembroke and how we program. So next we're going to talk a little bit about some group formation theory. This is one of my absolute favorite things to dive into. So we'll go ahead. The first thing that you'll see, there are 4 stages to this. The first stage is forming. When y'all think of a group forming, what comes to your mind? You got some bullet points up here if you need a little bit of help. It's this, the group is just beginning, the expectation setting. When do you think the forming happens? Here's a softball. When do you think forming happens? First 4 weeks, right? It's right at the very beginning. This forming process starts early on. A lot of times we think this is limited just to freshman halls. It is not. Those of you who are working in an upperclassman hall, whether the residents are new to there or if they lived in there last year, this is another chance for you to say, because it will not be a complete same staff anywhere that you go next year. This is what this staff is. This is how this building is different than last year. Not to say that it's different because last year was bad, but it's a new set of personalities, so things are slightly different. There are a couple of different levels where groups form. Can you think of maybe a group other than the building as a whole that is forming in this first 4 week to a month period? Go ahead.
The floor.
The floor is forming, right? The floor is forming. What else? Go ahead.
Your suite.
Your suite is forming. Exactly. Anything else? Go ahead.
Just your roommate.
Just your roommate. Heck yeah. That's the person you spend all your, like, when you go to sleep, you gotta trust them. Like, you know exactly where you sleep. Logan.
You know the dorm gangs?
The dorm gangs. Keep going. Tell me more.
I mean, like, there's floor, and then, like, there's that place between suite mates and roommates where it's like those couple rooms that all gang together.
Yeah.
Like, that's the group.
Yeah, like that's the group. There are groups within the group. What else? What else? Think about you as an RA, and maybe who you'd be working with. Go ahead.
Your staff.
Your staff. That is huge. You are forming with your staff. Not only is this time period crucial for you with your residents, but also the staff. This is a huge place for when you get to know each other. This is in front of all of you people. Houston did a fantastic job of this. First night, everybody moved in, they got all their stuff in, they were tired. This is just when the RAs were here, and Houston was like, hey, y'all should come play Call of Duty in my room. And everybody went and played Call of Duty over there. Just small ways that you do that, even from the beginning. So how you do that. Houston, you want to talk a little bit about storming?
Yeah, so I can talk about this a little bit from an RA perspective. Talking more to the perspective of the staff, like you are going to be a staff, but you're definitely going to be very much a staff. You're going to be a team, but you're going to very much be individuals. And with that, throughout the year, like you can definitely occasionally butt heads with one another, whether it be conflicting ideas and programs of what you want to see. And a lot of that can also just really be resolved over communication and just opening up. And just because the role of an RA is very unique in and of itself, given that you live where you work and you're always going to be surrounded by your coworkers. So it is definitely a very unique experience that is really found by pretty much no other really occupation to my knowledge. But really it's just something that really just takes time and working with, and also just comes through the staff bonding, and that is one big thing that you'll see as part of an RA is like just bonding with the staff. Aside from just like doing res life work is really one key focus that we try to do as Pembroke and just in all other halls as well. And it really just kind of helps ease this process as well, so that whenever you maybe butt heads with ideas or something, you kind of know how each other works and you know how to kind of resolve it and everything. And I know Keelan and I, we got off to a good start, but it definitely was a risk at first because Keelan didn't have a say in me. He just kind of inherited me as it was and didn't have a say whether or not I could be there.
I'm like a stepdad. You get the building and then everything that else comes in. You're like, well, redheaded stepchild. Yeah, perfect setup. Okay, so like Houston said, that was so good. That was off the dome. So when you talk about storming, it's that initial conflict. When you first storm, it's that first time like, oh, everything's great. We formed, everything's good. Like this is my new building. I'm in Kennedy. I'm with like 200 of my best friends. Everything is wonderful. Oh, like my sweet mate stole my toothbrush. Like that first initial. Oh yeah. That first initial conflict that you have with that other people is when this begins. What are some things that you all think of when you think of storming? Some examples that come to mind of small ways where it's like, uh-oh, here's some conflict. Bill.
Someone wants to go to sleep, and the person might
Yes, sleep. You would be amazed at like sleep cycles and how much they affect everything. What else?
Noise. Just like the people above you. I don't know what it is about Pembroke, but like, chill. Like that's some serious beef there.
100 years old, noise travels.
Yes.
Definitely an older building.
Max.
You can't agree with temperature to keep the room.
Temperature to keep the room. Ooh, yeah, y'all hear that one. Y'all hear that one. Go ahead.
When the washers are full and like what is done is that somebody will take the wash out and like they'll like mess with somebody's car thing.
Yes. Yes. You had one.
Respecting space and
Respecting space, yes. Y'all are talking about great things, and they seem like petty squabbles that kind of take place over a year. But when you're first meeting, a lot of people, when they come to Belmont, this is their first time with someone else in their room, right? Not everyone, but this is the first time that you've had this space. So they're working through these things. They're working on how do they go with conflict. One of the biggest things is, every time before this when you're in high school, you kind of got to choose who to spend time with and who not to, right? Like even if you're talking about athletics teams, bands, just general social groups, you really choose who you're with and who you're not. You get to eventually go home to your space unless you have like brothers, sisters, and things like that. But for the most part, this is the first time for our students, when they go back home, they're surrounded by people they may not get along with. And to be honest, some make it out of storming, some don't. You'll have some residents who just can't get past it. They can't get past it. They need to move rooms. They need to move buildings. They need to go through something like that. And to be frank, sometimes RAs don't get past that either. They hold grudges from the very beginning of the year with other RAs, and little things just nick time after time. They just kind of run up against each other, and they constantly have that. And that's not something unusual. You're not failing if that's the case. But there are ways past it. We'll talk about that with our next one. Oh, no. There we go. Okay, so norming is our next one. And norming is a lot about how do we work through conflict. As storming always approaches, norming is how do you make it through? How do we reach a compromise, and how do we get past these things? It's so crucial. We lose most groups, most residents during the storming phase. If things are not properly normed out, then you will not get past storming. Groups can end right here, and they never make it to that norm phase. How do we work through conflict is that big question. What are ideas that y'all have or ways that you think of how norming may take place? Go ahead, Josh.
Seeking some sort of third party to resolve an issue, or input from somebody else.
Yeah, a third party or input. Mediation. You all may have to do some of those. Go ahead.
You could write out like a roommate agreement, some sort of written contract that says, here's what we're gonna do, we sign to follow this.
Yeah, a roommate agreement. Very good. Especially for some of the things you see like temperature. You'd be amazed how many times they don't talk about the temperature. You wait for your roommate to go to sleep, and then you run over and like turn it down 6 degrees, and you hop back in the bed. I don't know, man. It's just cold. It's funny how that stuff happens. They just don't talk about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up, as we were just talking about it. I've had that experience in my own suite. It's just, there's no communication. People just kind of expect other people to read their mind. So that's kind of the first step, is just letting people know that something's bothering you.
Yes, that is so true. So true. Let's bring this to upperclassmen, because it's very easy to stay freshman. Maybe in an upperclassman hall, can y'all think of any things that may need to happen during the norming process? Go ahead.
Well, a lot of students might just be going from one roommate to 3 or 4 roommates, and that takes an entire new process with the kitchen and the shared bathroom and all of that. And you also have this new sense of independence, and trying to find balance between roommates can be really interesting.
Yes, that is so true. That is very true. You're just working with more people. You're working with more people. That's great. Anything else? Go ahead.
When you're having upperclassmen come together, it's kind of like a clash of routines. They've already kind of established how they live their life here, and especially when it's going to be like more people than just 2 people, all of those routines are going to kind of come together, especially like with noise and sleep cycles and temperature. And so like that open communication lines, those open communication lines need to be there, otherwise it's just going to be a bunch of passive aggressive weirdness, and no one wants that.
And then you throw a kitchen into the mix. You throw some dirty dishes in there. Just like roll a grenade in and walk out. It's the same thing. Like that. So many times these happen. It's just like, there was 1 speck of pepperoni left in the pizza tray. And it's real. It's real. Those are things that actually happen. So working through that, and again, this is not only for your residents, but also your staff. Sometimes people get talked over in the course of your meetings, and that frustrates some people. Expectation setting early on is such a great way to handle that. And then at the very end, just to talk over briefly, once you've made it through forming, storming, norming, you're performing. Once you figured out, okay, when conflicts arise, this is how we handle them, this is how we keep rolling. Because then by the end, you're just a well-oiled machine. It happens in your res hall, it happens on your staff, it happens with your RD, it happens in everything. Everybody, you probably already have a friend that you may not necessarily get along with, but when it comes up, you know how to handle it. And as those things go, you're golden. So next we're going to jump into not community service. We're going to jump into customer service a little bit, which is another important part of the job. Houston, I'll let you talk about these a little bit from the RA perspective.
So yes, from an RA perspective, obviously, if you were to ask like who's our customers, for the most part, like the instinctual answer would be residents. And yes, residents are definitely one of our primary concerns, but with residents, you will sometimes also have to deal with other people such as parents. Really some is for customer services, make sure you're really assisting customers, answering questions, taking pride in your hall, really like show the passion of why you wanted to be an RA, and make sure that it's very much conveyed to the people you're helping. And then for some is nots, one thing like in customer service, it does not mean always saying yes. It is okay to say no. Or another good thing, like for me, like I've had other experiences, particularly like during move-in when it's a very hectic week and you're dealing with people. Like sometimes you're dealing with one situation, another parent comes up or a resident asks up, and they have another thing is. You can always defer to someone else, but show that you want to help. Always push the motive of helping. So like if I was asked, oh, can you help me with this, and I'm already helping someone else, I'll say, no, unfortunately I can't get to that at the moment because I'm helping this other person, but I will find another person and send them up to you. Could I get like your name and room number where you need the assistance, and I will find someone else to help it. So you can always look to solve problems without saying yes. And also, try not to make promises, because in reality, you might not be able to help every situation. And especially if you don't know the full details of the situation, don't address the situation as if you know the situation.
That's a very great point. Don't be afraid to tell them, I don't know the answer. I need to talk to my RD. I need to talk to one of the returning RAs. Someone like that. One of the biggest things you can get yourself into a pickle of is making promises or saying yes to things that you can't fulfill just because you want to be the friend or just because you want to be able to help them out in the situation. Sometimes we need to get them from angry just to neutral. We don't have to get them to happy, because realistically you won't be able to do that all the time. But just to be able to get them to where they're not mad or where they know help is on the way, that's fine. I work in a building that is 106 years old. Sometimes the pipes clank in the mornings. Like, that's just the reality. We can try to help that situation and I can get FMS on it, but if I get a call from a parent at 7 in the morning that says, hey, I need this, my son can't go back to sleep because my pipe's thinking, I'm saying, ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't address this right now, but I promise I'll reach out to facility maintenance services and they will try to help the situation. So always rerouting to something you can do. That's a great point, Houston. So Houston made a great point of this, talking about our customers. It's not just our students. We think so much that we're dealing just with residents, but how we serve our students, that customer service right there, has a wide web of impact. It's not just them. When you treat a student well, it affects all these other groups. Students talk to their parents and they say, man, Houston, help me out. I didn't know how to do my laundry. Now I'm smelling fresh. Parents feel better about that. When guests come over, guests feel comfortable because nobody likes the red tag and the process of how to do it, but there is a piece of safety that comes with that. When we treat our guests well, and they're coming from Lipscomb, Trevecca, Vandy, Tennessee State, MTSU, anywhere, wherever they may be coming from, once that goes in, it spreads out. Man, Belmont's doing stuff right. Everything's going well. Same thing with prospective students and families as well as university staff. As you treat these people well, as you give them that, let's work towards a solution. I may not be able to say yes, but I can help you get towards a yes. As we push them in that direction, we continue to get that customer service where people are saying, man, our Res Life staff is getting something. We're really good. I've worked at other universities before this, and I can firmly say I've worked at schools of like 24,000 people. So being in a place with right around 8,000, we're doing great. We're crushing it, and we really lean on y'all to do that. There's only 17 RDs. All of you all, the like mob of RAs that we have, you all is what makes this run. Y'all are good, and you were selected from such a large pool, and here you are now. Like, you're awesome. This is just another step along that way. So then I'll let Houston talk a little bit about why this is necessary and how he's seen it help him in his role.
So customer service is very, very effective, and one of the big things is it really reduces the number of overall problems. From an RA perspective, probably the most typical customer service thing you'll deal with is maintenance reports. How many of you, when you showed up to Belmont, knew how to file a maintenance request? How many of you approached your RA asking about a maintenance request? Did your RA walk you through it and teach you how to do a maintenance request? And that is probably one of the biggest things I've seen is like you can make sure, like when you teach or when you're helping a customer, particularly residents, you can turn it into a learning experience as well and help them be self-sufficient. It's kind of the saying, you can give a man a fish or you can teach a man to fish. So essentially, like, you can make a learning experience, and that's going to reduce your overall problems, because maybe the first month you're getting a call every other day discussing a maintenance request, and then once you get into the third month, you're not getting any calls at all because you've then informed residents of how they can do that on their own. And then also improves public persona and strengthens your brand. Helping out with the little things goes back to them being more, making it easier for you to be approachable and coming out to that. Helping with little things, and how Keelan mentioned, like helping students goes back to the parents, and really it is also it really is the inverse too, of like helping with parents is gonna go back as well. And really just treat everyone as if, like we put priority on residents, but treat everyone as if they're residents or their means to helping the residents that you work with too.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And the only other thing I would add to that is this piece of consistency. You deal with one lockout at 9 a.m., you deal with another one at 1, you deal with another one at 3. It's finding a way to treat that 3 p.m. lockout the same way that you treated that 9 a.m. lockout. Because it can be easy the third one of the day to be grumpy and grouchy. But we owe it to them, even if you're upset, to know that we're helping and we're reaching an ultimate goal. And it is tough because right now in midterms and everything, RAs do not want to have to be dealing with lockouts, right? It's 2 days till spring break, whoop, whoop. But with all these things in place, it can be tough to maintain that, but customer service goes a really long way with that stuff. And so I'm going to blaze through this really quickly because we're coming short on our time. Again, you may be dealing with people who are already upset. Again, we want to get them to neutral. We want to be able to get these people to neutral. We want to be equal level of respect to everyone that we deal with and every situation that we deal with. Make sure you put yourselves in their shoes. At some point, you were a student getting these, and you still may need help at some point. That's realistic. But make sure we're able to empathize with them and what's going on. And it's okay to ask for help. If you don't have the answer, you don't have to fake it. Other people are here. We have a system in place to help you all with this. Similarly, being able to say no. If someone says, hey, can I get an extra loft bar so I can do like a triple bunk? It's okay to say no. We can't make every single thing work. As you learn the policy, some things we say no because it's good. Did y'all see The Bachelorette over the summer when that guy fell off the bed and like broke his face? Yeah. We don't want people going triple bunk. That's how you don't get a rose. And it's being able to say no kindly. No but or no and instead of just no. And then again, talk about de-escalating situation. And it's okay to refer up. If you don't have the answer and you know it's something your RD needs to deal with, we get paid to work with you all. Like it's a passion that we have. We've chosen to do this work. And then again, it's all part of the job. So as we go through this recap with your customer service, thinking about how you're developing community and also how you do this. Know what you're getting into. Part of this is even an expectation setting for you all and saying, this is where we're hitting the ground running with this kind of stuff. When you think about customer service, just make sure you're on your game. You're putting your best foot forward. And part of the onus is on you to learn the most that you can so that you are the best equipped that you can to help them in the long run. And with that, that's all that we have.